with the reaping hook, you need a sharp edge on your side. So Glenn's going to demonstrate. He has an animal horn on with a blue belt hook, and he has a whetstone. What he's going to do is grind the edge to have a sharp edge. Now this method, over years, will reduce the amount of metal in the side blade. But this is a quick way to make sure you have a sharp edge and can cut the grain. So he swings, cuts, and then he drops it back. Now these are in groups or in bundles, because you're going to tie them into sheaves. Now we're going to demonstrate by using a straw to create a hand-tied sheaf or bundle. Now I use those terms intermittently and alternately. There was once one senior thresherman here that told me that when I kept calling them bundles, that he did not go to church on Sunday morning. He called the thing bringing in the bundles, sheaves. So I started calling them sheaves. But then the next year, he came back and told me that, Sonny, I've got a cousin out in Kansas, and he calls it bundles, so I suppose you can do that. And he said with a twinkle in his eye. So I just remember that in alternating terms. So next we're going to demonstrate, once the grain is put into bundles or sheaves, demonstrate showing the third day. So this cutting was a very laborious method. So mechanization in the 1830s, Cyrus McCormick Jr. was working on creating a mechanized way of doing it. And he came up with the reaper. The reaper is pulled by a horse, is powered by a bull wheel, which is there toward Route 30 side, has a reciprocating cutting blade, and it's got these rotating rakes. And the rakes can be set for how many come down on a side, depending on how thick your grain is. So this cuts and sweeps. It still does not tie into bundles. Unfortunately, the wire ends would break off, get in the straw or in the grain, and could be ingested by animals, which at times could be fatal. So when the twine tie patent was applied, most of the binders became twine tie. This one shows canvases carrying there's a cutter bar, just like the reaper, and a reel to help sweep it onto the platform. The canvas carries it up, there's 3 canvases, carries it up to the tying platform. As when enough is reached the platform, then there's an automatic trigger and a twine tie from a knotter is accomplished. And you can see here the sheaves are tied or bound together with twine. Now these would be put in shocks, usually 6 to 8, possibly 10, with one laid across facing the direction of rain is what we do. Now, once these shocks have dried, that you have a dried grain, you have to thresh them. And the earliest way of threshing was with flail. So here we have 2 flails. The flails have 3 parts. They have a handle, the leather thong, and the hammer. And what they're going to do is literally beat the grain out of the head. have been separated and laid such that the heads are in the center of the tarp. That's why they're focused on that part. It doesn't do any good to hit the stems. You need to hit the heads. I'm going to move and turn them over so they can have a different angle of attack with the hammer of the flail. Reviewing references in history, it was said that a man with flailing for 10 hours could do up to 8 bushels of grain. So again, not very efficient, but it was one way of accomplishing it. Now this is threshing. We need to winnow. The grain is not ready to be used in the house for grinding in the flour for baking pies or cakes or bread. So we're going to demonstrate the use of natural wind to separate the lighter chaff, broken straw, from the heavier grain. And we don't have much wind right now. But the idea is that the lighter chaff and straw will blow in the wind and the grain should land on the tarp. All right guys, let Glenn go to work before there's none left. Glenn's going to demonstrate the winnowing basket. This is a device where one man can accomplish the same thing. As you can see, he's keeping the grain in the basket and letting the chaff blow off the edge. Alright, now we're going to advance in mechanization to the groundhog thresher. This was mechanization in which there's a rotating cylinder that has metal teeth on it, and it's up against concave, which is a parallel piece of metal that has teeth. And what happens is the cylinder rotates, but the concaves are stationary teeth, and the grain is literally rubbed out as the heads pass the system. Well, then the straw will be, go onto the shakers, and the grain will drop down onto the tarp. The straw will be rubbed off the edge of the machine. This is purely a threshing machine that does not clean the grain or wind. Today it's being powered by a 5-horsepower Tumble engine, vintage 1922. This is owned by Dr. Morgan, the operator. This engine will hit and miss ignition. Has a 5 5/8 by 7.5 door stroke. And the machine's going to transfer power via a belt pulley that's attached to the cylinder. Separation, the engine and the cylinder will be the one that sets we got the strong one, and we got the power off the machine, make sure the belt stays in position. You would note that the groundhog thresher does not have any wheels on it. This was meant to be Avalon and family farm so they could use this when they need to separate the grain. 1877 patent on the threshing machine. The engine power unit was originally bought in 1922, nearly 103 years ago. You can see the grain is dropping down onto the front. It's being shaken, and the straw is being defined by J.I. Case in his work, the J.I. Case section became dominant in the early 1900s of producing threshing machines and later combines. Now, this grain has been threshed, but it's not been winnowed or cleaned. Now we're going to demonstrate a hand crank fanning mill, which will use artificial plastic from the grain and reciprocating screens through the raindrops and the blast of air from the green along the end up in that shell spots in the bottom toward the back of the machine. You can see the chaff and broken straw blowing out the east end of the machine. You can see how much trash is in the grain as far as what is going in on the top and how much is coming out the side of the machine there. There's an optimal speed to crank it. If you crank it too slow, some of the chaff will drop through into the screens. If you do it too fast, the wind may blow some of the grain out of the discharge air. Just like many mechanical contrivances, there's a sweet spot for the speed. in the evolution of threshing machinery, we have here is an Ellis Keystone Champion #2 threshing machine. The difference between this and the groundhog thresher is this uses the cylinder and teeth and concaves of the groundhog thresher in the shaker pans to help the grain drop down, but it has a cleaning chute with a windmill fan, so it does the hand crank fanning mill. And then it also has a tailing system. Any grain or heads that made it through the cylinder without getting threshed are heavier, and they drop down at the bottom of the machine, and then they're carried by this elevator on the north side, which has Ellis Champion painted on it, up to and in front of the cylinder to make it go through the machine again. And then we have an apron stacker here at the back end, which carries the straw away. Today we're being powered by a 4-horse sweep. The sweep is an SB Haynes with an 1850 Lancaster PA patent on it, and the horsepower is provided by the Bengal-Esch family of Kinzers. These are Belgians, which are giving us the power to run the machine. They're turning the 4-horse sweep, and tumbling rods carry that rotary energy to a belt pulley, which then transfers via belt to the belt pulley of the threshing machine. Again, this is a labor-intensive maneuver. You have the horseman providing the power. You've got the person watching the belt and belt pulleys to make sure the belts stay on. You have the feeder. You got the band cutter, which is the assistant to the feeder. And you've got the strawmen, which are taking care of the straw. And then you got the thresherman, who's kind of watching the entire operation to make sure everything is coordinated and synchronized. You will notice that this threshing machine is on wheels. Thus, this was meant to be able to be moved from farm to farm, whereas the groundhog thresher was meant to only stay on one farm. Back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there were two types of threshing rigs. One of them was a community threshing ring, in which case groups of farmers would go together, buy the threshing machine and the horsepower, or later tractor or gas engine. And then they would go to each other's farms at an agreed time and thresh for each other. The other option was for a commercial thresherman who would go to the bank, get a loan, and would buy the threshing machine, buy the horse sweep power or steam engine or tractor, and then he would hire help and come to the farm, and he would charge so much a bushel for threshing. I talked about the main belt drive. The power comes from that axle, the shaft, and to others via belts. And sometimes, especially on 120-year-old machines, the belts don't hold. So the thresherman is watching, saw, and now has replaced the belt, and we'll get back in business here. That belt is powering the fanning mill. It's going to obtain some belt resin, which will help make the belt stickier and stay on track on the pulleys. For those of you on this north side, you can see at the back end there the tailings. Unthreshed grain is coming out, going up the elevator, and is being fed in with the new straw heads on the feeder platform. There's the grain man who's using the wooden containers to catch the clean grain. They're on a roller mechanism so that one could be in position and the other one ready to go. We have a 4-horse sweep here. If you had longer arms on it, this could be made into an 8-horse sweep. There were some Case Woodbury which could handle as many as 12 horses. Of course, that would be powering a much larger threshing machine than what we have here. Those were typical up in the Red River Valley of Minnesota and in the Dakota Plains. So you can see what we did with human power. Once the grain is dried, this replaces the flailing and the grain fanning all in one step, and also it takes the straw away. The grain is not the only commodity. Straw is another commodity. And it was used for horse stables and other places where bedding was needed for farm animals. This machine has the apron stacker, which is carrying the straw away and up to our cart. You'll see on the west end that the bigger machines have what's called a wind stacker. There's a tube on top, and there's a fan on the back of the machine which sucks in the straw and then blows it through the tube so you can create a straw pile. And it keeps it away from the machine so that the machine can continue to thresh and produce straw and separate the grain.
I like that battery pack.